Blazing screens, chaos unfolds, crimson law, tales retold, anime wars, blades collide, justice screams, nowhere to hide. Crimson law, judgment reigns, shock critique, breaking chains, blood red ink by the blade, truth unleashed for silver-haired elven babes. Neon skies, warriors clash, pixel worlds, honor smashed, battle cries, vengeance near, crimson's wrath, all shall fear. Thunder roars the verdict grim, mechs explode, lights grow dim, bloodlines torn, broken dreams, crimson law silencing screams. As heroes fall and villains rise, shattered dreams and severed ties, stand and fight, the time is nigh, rising up to do what's right. Crimson law, judgment reigns, shock critique, breaking chains, blood red ink by the blade, truth unleashed for silver-haired elven babes.
Good evening, everyone. How are we doing on this average Saturday night? Here we are on the internet, here to talk about all of the weekly anime stuff, as well as some manga and everything, and what chat has picked, and some revisions going forward. There are some things I do want to change around here that I do want to present to those in the audience, because it most affects those who are here watching this stream live. So stick around for a little bit. Once we get done with the review of Love, Chunibyo, and other pardon me, other Delusions, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do going forward. With that being said, hello everyone. Hello Jeremy Turner, and to Marcel. It's nice to see you guys here. Hope you guys have been having a good week. Things have been pretty interesting. So week 2, we finally started to get some good stuff rolling out. So crazy, we don't even have a full slate, and I think I'm watching more anime than last season. Yeah, right now I think I have 19 series, but I have been actively just sort of like ignoring some that I don't want to check out because reasons. And yeah, it has been packed the past couple of days. I feel like once things roll into week 2 and we get all of the releases, it's going to be really good. We're looking at a pretty good season. And we do have a decent chunk of them to talk about tonight, including some that weren't necessarily on my list to begin with, but I decided to check out because there were people who really, really wanted me to watch some stuff. So that's a thing. Anyway, this week was kind of interesting for me. I mean, it was okay doing all the videos and stuff. I got those done on time, but I was basically up till 3 a.m. this morning, hanging out with friends. A friend decided to celebrate his birthday late, so we were over there. I did not get much sleep, so if I'm a little bit weird today, that explains a little bit why. Didn't do a whole lot of reading, at least not as much reading as I had hoped to, but I did get around to a couple of things. It kind of sucks when I'm on the job and we're making a bunch of call outs and stuff, framing the second deck of a house, and I don't get to listen to audiobooks. It's all right. You're always weird. Yeah, that checks out. But I did get around to a couple of manga. There are some things that I do want to talk about, so we'll get into those. And then, of course, I already mentioned that there's Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions to talk about, and so on and so forth. There is some interesting stuff as far as anime goes, but we might as well go all into the reading section of the night. So let's bring this up here. We have Arceus Rules. How you doing, Arceus? Okay, so this is Please Go Home, Miss Akutsu. And now the idea behind this one is that it's a rom-com of sorts. And the main character has this Gyaru who constantly hangs around at his place, and basically just makes it her hangout. And over time, of course, they, develop their relationship and everything, get a lot closer to each other. It starts off more so as she's just sort of using it as a convenient place to slack and dodge school. But over time, you do get some actual pressure. So 10 volumes in, and things have really heated up with this one. Yes, unfortunately, they don't go fully uncensored in this one, but there is a lot of fan service. There is quite a bit of fan service in this one. So if that's what you're looking for, it's got you covered. It keeps a small cast, which is something I appreciate, and you'll be introduced to almost all of the characters pretty quickly, and they are consistent members of everything that's happening. Is there feet for a vagabond? Potentially. Hello, Vagabundo. How you doing? I can't specifically remember any times where they really emphasized feet or anything, but all the girls definitely got some nice titties. Plenty of panties and stuff like that. There's one scene in this latest volume where one girl is walking around in nothing but her panties, like no bra or anything. They're having a whole conversation about how this chick is going to seduce the main character of the series. Either way, there's not really much to talk about without getting into like super spoilers or anything for this. I would just say like it's a decent enough rom-com manga, and if it got an anime, I would actually look forward to it. The thing I would be a little bit concerned about is how much of the fan service that they would keep in it. Otherwise, like without that, I feel like it would lose a little bit of the like appeal to it, but still a solid enough romance anime just with character comedy and everything that it would still probably end up in my like interesting category for manga or anime. So Crimson does recommend another one that Crimson does recommend, that isn't afraid to shy away from a man and his wife getting down and dirty, would be The Ideal Sponger Life. Now, I've been reading the manga for this one. I'm on volume 5 now, so we're getting to some interesting like world development and like character work. I like the art style for this one. Plus, Aura is just hot. Like, I know there's at least one of you out there who is a fan of redheads. Okay, I know at least one of you out there is a fan of redheads. So there you go. There's that hot redhead, huge tits, down to fuck. Aura's great, but the premise for this, I've been over this once on my channel, but I will go over it again and then talk a little bit about the newest volume. Is that this guy, our main character, is summoned to another world to basically be the husband of the queen regent of this nation. and specifically it has to be him because he descends from a very similar lineage from her to her, which is an interesting element that is presented herein. And there are some like political reasons as to why she wants specifically him and why his behavior as a sponger is particularly desirable. But all things considered, basically it's just an isekai story where this based largely on political intrigue and focusing quite a bit on these two characters right here, Zenjiro and Aura. So, latest volume, they start to deal with a little bit more of the world building and the political stuff insofar as a certain general is concerned. There's also other foreign nations who are now sending like diplomats to the area. Diplomats, there's some stuff there. As long as the as long as the titties are as big as my head. Anyway, I've enjoyed how this series has done a pretty good job of like setting up these I guess minor political crises that keep cropping up, like the whole idea behind like the various amounts of like strife that are within the kingdom in and of itself. Like for example, the latest volume includes a protracted conflict over protecting a salt transportation road from predatory animal like pack hunter. They're basically just giant velociraptors. So it's this whole thing of like if the nobles can secure the road in and of themselves, it's good for the kingdom. It proves that there is, someone in that noble house who can manage things once the current head passes away. On the other hand, if the national military gets involved, it could present an opportunity for certain people to gain even more notoriety than they already have. And it starts to talk about like the balance of power and how people like are perceived by the public and all that. Honestly, it gets a lot into like the minutia of how these events affect the standing of the Queen Regent and just the central government in general. I've liked that part of it. It's also made some pretty interesting world building choices insofar as magic goes, which we haven't really necessarily seen a ton of, as well as just like the fighting power of military. So like I think one of just like the random, like non-consequential, cool things that this one has done is instead of like having mounted cavalry on horses or anything, they have them on wyverns, which are basically like it. Well, they're a category of wyverns, but in this, they're depicted as like two-legged lizards that look a lot like velociraptors. So just imagine a bunch of dudes riding velociraptors shooting bows at you. That's pretty cool, okay? And yes, I did mention this some time ago, but I am returning to this one since it's something that I read this week. I picked up some more. I have two more volumes to work through. Hopefully, I can do that while also getting through Trigun because there's that. But in spite of this getting a 7.22 rating, I feel like it actually deserves higher. Like the 8 I feel like is perfectly fair for this one, just on objective qualities that I can point out with like writing, with progression, and with character development. Is it the greatest? No, there are still some rough patches and everything. Sometimes it does feel like the author does try to skip over things they don't know how to handle, but overall they do the political end of it pretty well. But we still got one more thing to get through. So I've mentioned this one quite a bit because I've been trying to keep up with it. But we're going to talk about it again because I finally got to Mio Carmine. And the mercenary state of Zem and everything that's going on there. I kind of feel the same way. Like I'd like to read a whole lot more manga, but between watching anime to keep up with the stuff for the show and just my day job in general, I don't get as much time as I would like to read manga. So we're a little over halfway through this series now. It's been interesting to see the whole like Royal Academy thing start, and we've gotten a lot of perspective from Yuriga. Insofar as like her interactions with Tomoe and everything. We've also seen Tomoe's character development in all of this, as well as some more backstory on York Carmine and some other characters in here. Generally, I've been pretty well satisfied with how this series has been doing. I kind of felt like this second half here was going to start to progress more and more towards I guess final confrontation stuff after we were introduced to Fuga Han at the halfway point. But it has done a little bit of the de-escalation with things that I've kind of liked in these last two volumes. That focus on the wedding, on some of like the there was the alternate universe like bonus chapter that they did where it talked about the other timelines where Queen Alicia or where Soma didn't become the king, I guess you could say. There's some cool stuff there. It's basically just been a really relaxing return to what the story started as. I like that we haven't gotten as much of like the big conflicts and everything, even though there is still stuff brewing in the background. Like it's still talking about Fuga's expedition into the demon lord's domain. It still regularly mentions this the nine-headed dragon archipelago, and it still talks about the Lunarian Orthodox, which honestly I have my theories about. The way they talk about things and the way they've kind of started talking about these things up, like setting these things up. Alicia's power and the story is fantastic, hardcore Infinity War stuff. Anyway, this one is written very well. I was very happy with the anime experience. Going into the novels, I now kind of see where like they cut content and everything and they just sort of skipped over things. It's unfortunate to see that, but like it's even more unfortunate to see that the rest of the story isn't going to get adapted. Like no one is going to no one is ever, or none of the anime onlys are ever going to meet Naden. And that is a travesty. Anyway, I've enjoyed the unique take on isekai for this one. But that kind of like is the last of the things that I have read outside of just like regular like chapter stuff like Chainsaw Man. I keep up with Chainsaw Man, Centuria, Ichi the Witch, stuff like that. But I don't often find myself needing to talk about those things because they're currently, I mean, I shouldn't say that they're currently running series. The big problem is that I read them in small little bits. So my updates on them, you know, I should start talking about them quite regularly. I should start talking about the active reads on like manga apps and stuff more often. So maybe next week I will include some of those, talk a little bit about Centuria and everything. But that being said, so the poll for last week was a Chunibyo victory. So that had been an anime that I had chose that ended up on the poll there. So I always feel bad when that happens, when like we don't get enough suggestions to the point where like we don't get enough suggestions to fill out the poll. So I put one on there. It's happened twice. and I have put in a suggestion. It's won both times. Spice and Wolf and Love, Chinibio, and Other Delusions. Those were ones that I put on the poll as my choice. So that'll be relevant for later. Either way, we watched Love, Chinibio, and Other Delusions this week, and I gotta say, I had been looking forward to it. It was on my list to watch, and it helps if you change what you're sharing. I gotta say, I actually really, really liked Love, Chinibio, and Other Delusions. I thought this was a really, really great anime. So, this didn't just live up to my expectations, it surpassed them. I'd seen a lot of clips. I had seen a lot of people talk about Love, Chinibio, and Other Delusions. I had seen a lot of people sing its praises. And I had expected this to be an enjoyable anime. I did not expect it to enjoy it as much as I did. So, in a world where rom-com animes tend to be just as overrepresented by a flood of slop, just like isekai anime are, this is a reminder that there really are worthwhile anime to check out. Because look, rom-com animes, or just romance anime in general, they are there are a lot of them, much like there are a lot of isekais. Um, and not all of them are particularly good. And it can be hard to sit there and sift through a bunch of them when so many of them just aren't worth your while. And this is kind of the reminder that there still do get made good anime, or there still are good anime in the genre out. And that's really the only point I wanted to make with that particular entry in this review. Is just that in any genre, no matter how bad it gets, there's always going to be one or two or a few of them that will be pretty good. So, this show is a fantastic blend of humor, romance, and serious character drama. It can range from very moving and emotional to incredibly humorous and entertaining without giving you an incredible sense of dissonance between the two things. So, here's one of the big things that I do want to focus on for this series, or for just a show in general. When you're writing something, you don't want tone to like really clash with itself. Otherwise, parts of the show will start to feel out of place. With this one, it does a really good job of tying both the humor that is brought out by Rika and a bunch of her other friends' Chinibio behavior, and the background as to why certain characters behave the way they do, particularly with Rika. This one does a really good job of like basically presenting everything that has been troubling Rika, with just not being able to accept her dad's passing, or all of the family dynamic stuff, the people who just couldn't accept her and everything, and just all around, like, she's had a rough life. And I feel like just being able to balance the fact that like there are some heavier topics to talk about, as well as generally the comedy that's brought in by their outlandish behavior, is something that does require some measure of skill. I feel like it was done very tactfully, so I appreciate that. One of the biggest reasons for this is that the characters for this series tend to be incredibly well written, with their own complexities and subtleties hidden behind the surface layer gimmick that makes up their characters. So this is one where like even like I feel like the best representation of this would be the dynamic between Dekomori and Nibutani, to where they're constantly fighting with each other, like they're constantly bickering and everything. But there are times where they can also be really nice to each other and get along and be like acting out of concern for the other party. Generally speaking, they aren't just one note. There is a whole lot more to them than just, say, like Nibutani being completely embarrassed by her past behavior, or Dekomori being obsessed with the Mabinogian. And that in and of itself does help to tie in a lot of those elements. Again, with Rika kind of being like the linchpin between the more serious and emotional moments in the story, as well as like the comedy that it does very heavily focus on, it does a really good job of transitioning back and forth between the two of those things. So, in spite of all the delusions shared between the members of the cast, everyone actually has some kind of endearing quality to them that makes them a worthwhile member of the story. Basically, there's no one in this story who I like particularly hated. There wasn't a character that I disliked. Everyone that it brought in had some level of like likability to them that made them worthwhile to have around. I mean, like you have, Rika and Utah, where Rika's whole Rika's just adorable. I'm not gonna lie, I found her very endearing. And Utah is a good person who, in spite of maybe being a little bit dense at times, has a really good heart. The side characters, you have Makoto, which is Utah's friend, the guy who is constantly hitting on the sleepy chick, and then Kumin, who is the sleepy chick herself. Like everyone in here, again, Nibutani comes up because she's the most aggressive and standoffish of the entire group. Has some sort of good, like positive quality that lends to them contributing something good to this story. And you wouldn't expect it from certain characters, especially not in the way they behave towards people who antagonize them. But it's there. Sorry, blanking. We'll get back to the review. So I think it does a good job of having each member play their own unique role in the story and having generally a distinct enough personality from the others for it to not feel played out and boring in spite of the consistent Chinibyo gag used as the basis for all the comedy. So this is, particularly important because it doesn't feel like it's doing the same thing over and over and over again, in spite of the fact that generally the comedy is all based on the one thing, the Chinibyo. And when it comes to comedy, there are some that just sort of overplay their shtick, which watch does start to feel a little bit like it's just trying too hard to do certain things. There are plenty of other shows that do very similar things. Being able to maintain your core gag while also keeping it fresh enough to be funny every time is important when it comes to, just comedy in general. Like if you can get something that will, like keep a core audience entertained and you can repeat that effectively without basically doing the same thing note for note every time, you can successfully continue that, at least for a little while. Anyway, so moving on to a little bit more of the serious storytelling this one presents. I especially love to focus on Reika and her life story as to why she ended up the way she did. It makes for solid emotional hook for the series to make you feel invested in what's happening. In spite of dealing with heavier topics like grief and loss, it still maintains its sense of levity as well. So, a little bit of a, spoiler talk about this one. One of the big core issues for the first season was that Rika cannot accept the death of her father because that basically upended her entire life. It became a huge sticking point for her, something she couldn't get over. She hadn't been informed of his death until literally the day he died. She didn't know he was even dying. And couldn't come to terms with it because she was just too young and didn't have the experience to understand what was going on. This causes a whole bunch of conflicts with her family and everything about her, like just not believing anything that's actually going on and generally trying to detach herself from reality altogether. That's where you get the Chunibyo stuff. Honestly, I thought that was like a really good emotional hook with just her going through all of that stuff, especially as you get to the end of season 1 and you have her sort of like being forced to accept reality and going through a bunch of stuff that Yuta then has to run out and try and correct because he feels guilty for his part in it. Honestly, I thought that was just really good writing. I liked the character of Rika in and of herself. I already said I thought she was adorable. I thought it was hilarious. To top it all off, the animation is particularly of note. In spite of this not being an action series, there are still plenty of well animated, albeit imaginary, fight scenes that would put a lot more action heavy works to shame. All around, it's a stellar experience. So yeah, as far as this goes, like they have a bunch of like the imaginary Chinibio fights where all the girls are doing their ridiculous stunts and everything. And of course, it's all in their heads, but it's still really well animated and they went harder with those scenes than they needed to. Even in like slower scenes where they're more so just dealing with real world stuff and not having these crazy magical girl fight scenes, they still do a really good job of animating this. I like how well they did all around. It's just honestly no regrets in watching. So language, I didn't notice any language. Definitely no political violence. There was a little bit of violence if you want to include the girls hitting each other and a little bit of blood and stuff like that. Family friendly. It's very family friendly for the most part. There's maybe some bath scenes and everything in here, but nothing particularly egregious. And it does have a ton of entertainment value. So honestly, very good series. Although I will say season 1, the first 12 episodes are definitely a better experience than the second 12 episodes. Not by much. I would say season 1 is a 9, season 2 is an 8. But I definitely liked season 1 a whole lot better. I felt like it had a better emotional hook. It was far more gripping and a lot more funny. Although the big issue that I did face with this was the first episode was really hard to watch because it was pretty like cringe inducing to sit through. Like it was it was a little rough just to watch Yuta sort of relive the pains of his past and everything. But after that, it was a really good experience. You get through that first episode, everything gets a whole lot better. So I will say, glad I got to watch it. This finally gave me an excuse to watch something really good. Now, that being said, we're gonna talk about this week's winner, and then we're gonna pitch some things going forward as far as how we're going to do the chat picks every night. So, let's go here. So, as you can see, with 38 votes coming in over the week, Real Girl 3D Kanojo placed first with 58% of the vote. Now, I have a couple of problems. I'm not going to particularly disqualify this. But I have a couple of problems that I'm starting to realize about this poll. The first being that obviously it's not that hard to rig. If you guys were around for last week, I talked a little bit. Well, not last week. It would have been, I don't know. One of the last shows, I talked about how I had abused the poll basically to troll Arceus. And while I had been doing that, someone else was actively doing the same thing. And there is no guarantee out there that this isn't active. That there isn't someone who is out there actively influencing these polls by making additional accounts to try and select whatever they want to win. That would be one of the things. And now the other one, and the one that I actually think is a little bit more pressing to me, is just the overall fairness of the poll. So, the issue I have here is that a lot of you people who tune in here will give suggestions, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys who are in here actively participating in the streams. And I would like to make it a little bit more fair because some people pick really mainstream things. Some people pick things that they think that aren't as mainstream, but that I will like. And I want both to have an equal chance of winning. And it's not necessarily fair if it's constantly put to a vote on the channel and just anyone can scroll by and tap an option. because it's going to be weighted in favor of inherently the show that has more fans. So I'm not disqualifying this week's entry. We're still going to watch Real Girl. But going forward, I'm heavily kicking around the idea of transitioning more so to something like this. To where rather than having the entire channel vote on it, which I do like having viewers involved in this, but I also want the chance for people to actually get their suggestions through rather than have to enter the same thing. So the idea would be that everyone's suggestions go on the spin wheel, and we just spin at the end of the night, and whoever gets selected, that's what we watch. There's no big votes or anything, and there's no chance of it getting rigged. Okay? And yes, there's no limit for options, so it may be one of those things where I start putting one on myself every week. At the end of the day, though, I feel like this is more fair to people who are out here viewing the streams, who are actually suggesting the anime. Particularly, I do want to point out that Marcel has suggested Chio's School Road repeatedly, hoping that it would gain traction. I think at this point, people are just actively botting the poll. And this would also pretty much give a better chance of that series winning. So if you guys in the chat are cool with this, this is where I would like your input. This will be kind of how we go forward from here, and we'll actually start doing this tonight. I feel like this one gives people a little bit more of a chance. It's a little bit more random. And I can be confident that it's just completely safe forever. And it doesn't limit people's options. I no longer have to, like screw people out of things. So that being said, if you guys have suggestions, since we don't have a limit, we can, in fact, start putting anime on the list. So if you guys have suggestions that you want to put on the wheel to spin for the night to see what I'm going to watch this next week, well, let's do it. Jeremy Turner says 86. Anyone? Muffler Tape says Erased. I'm going to check my list because I want to put one on there too. So let me see what I have in my list that I have not seen. Actually, hold on. I think I have something. Let's see. Interesting. Okay, I could do that one. But at this point, the expectations for Chio are pretty high, which is kind of Chio School Road. Right. Chio's. I spelled that wrong. Chio School Road. We had Brittany in here with Yuri on Ice. Oh, God. Hell Teacher Nube. Fucking hell. Okay, is Hell Teacher Nube over? Let's see. The reboot, huh? Okay, then I would basically just be catching up on it. I hope you're okay with that. And let's see. I still need to kind of find what I want to put on here. So let's go to my plan to watch. Those are all seasonals. I think I actually need to delete this one. I've been reading the manga for that, so I don't need it. Let's just full send it. We'll go back here and I'll put on here for myself. Oh, who else is here? We have two people vetoing Yuri on Ice. We'll go with that. Because that's what I feel like. And if there are no other entries, guys, because that's 6 and there are 9 people here. For now, like I said, guys, just throw out your suggestions for that. I guess for a little while. Do we spin it now or do we wait until the end of the night, guys? That's up to you, chat. Do we spin now or do we wait until the end of the night? There's one vote for spin. 2 votes for spin. I'm guessing that's a vote to spin. All right. See what it lands on. So next week, we will be watching Erased. Someone is very happy. Okay. It just barely, yeah. So, with that said, we are going to continue doing that from now on because that's a whole lot easier than letting everyone run the poll and all that. So, next week, Well, actually, I've got to watch 3D I got to watch Real Girl. So next week, is going to be Real Girl, and then we won't do this, the week after that. So basically, I've got the next 2 anime lined up. I got my work cut out for me, but oh well. I'm sure Muffler Tape's not going to let me forget that. So I will rely on him to make sure that it doesn't get forgotten. Yes, it was in fact so much easier. It's a lot, I guess, more fair and more engaging to the people who are actually here for the stream to see these reviews and everything. So, we're gonna keep doing that. But there is one last thing we got to do for the night. So, more important than anything that we have done so far tonight, we've got seasonal anime to talk about. So, this is where we left off as of last week. There were only 4 anime out, and 1 didn't even get an episode. So, we had Tojima. We had Sentenced to be a Hero. We had Tamon's B-Side. And we had Jack of All Trades, Party of None. So, we're going to go over these 4 anime, and then we are going to talk about the new stuff. Exactly. So, Tojima wants to be a common writer. This almost went the way that I had kind of predicted it was going to go. Almost. So, this latest episode, Futaba has her encounter with the Spider-Man, and his theme song is really, really catchy. Just the spider, spider, spider. Honestly, really good episode. I liked it. I was arguing with Biggles over whether it was actually a good episode or not. He said it's the worst episode here. I think it was hilarious. Futaba has her whole encounter with the Spider-Man, and that lends to her realizing Shocker is in fact real. And Spider-Man, of course, decides that he's going to turn her into a monster. Which is why I thought, which is what I thought was going to happen. I thought she was going to have this whole encounter with the spider. And he was going to turn her into a monster. And it was going to be this big dramatic clash between Ichio and Futaba. I thought that was going to be one of the big things that they were going to do. No, they spared her. I kind of appreciate that, but it was really funny to see her strip down to nothing but her underwear and go running across the rooftops to escape the monster. So that was a very interesting direction that all went in. Also the wait, you weren't cosplaying? Oh, that's the angle you were going for. Man, there was some good stuff in this anime. However, the one thing I do know that a lot of people around here called was that the idols were in fact going to be Shocker agents, which was confirmed in this episode that the Bat has been going around turning idols into Shocker combatants. Tojima was awesome, 100% agree. A great episode again, even without Tojima. The sound design when Gigantar, the idol, was walking around was vicious. Yes, that was another thing. They made her steps so heavy, like they just thud, 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 thud. That was so vicious. That was fucking savage. That body on Futaba. Mm-hmm. You know the show is good when the MC isn't in the episode at all. I respect the show a lot. Yes. I like that they aren't taking a hard line on Tojima necessarily being the main character, even though he is the titular character. He's not necessarily the main guy, and they are willing to branch off and cover some of the other characters exclusively. And it's still fun when they are there. Like, It's still good stuff. So yeah, all around great show. The Fat Idol was also hilarious. How she wanted to go after her friend, but still ate the 2 bowls of ramen. Yeah, the whole thing with her was brutal. It was brutal. Like they did not pull punches on that. So Tojima Wants to Be a Common Writer, still holding on tightly to its must-watch category. It is honestly just deserves more recognition. It deserves more recognition. This show is awesome. And that comes from a guy who was dissing it when it first came out. Like this show like really changed my opinion on it really fast. Sentenced to Be a Hero did not have a new episode this week, not that I saw anyway. So, I mean, okay. It's whatever, but I would have liked another episode for this to kind of see how the story plays out. But now I gotta wait another week. So fuck me, I guess. So we won't be talking about that one. However, we do have an episode of Tamon's B-side to talk about. And honestly, I've enjoyed the show quite a bit. I think it's very funny. The whole like murder pact thing that happens with the girls and like the fan club at school, where you have our main character like sitting there as like, if Tamon was ever with someone, we would kill her, right? Right. Like it's just ridiculous, over the top. It is, in fact, just kind of crazy. Where's Catwoman? Murder. So I like the dynamic that they have going between the main character and Tamon. It's just like her being kind of ridiculous is fun, but at the same time, there are certain pacing issues that I have with it that I'm just not particularly a fan of. That's why I wouldn't put it up in the must watch. I would say it's very good. It does a good job of being an entertaining comedy and, you know, having all of the ridiculous shoujo stuff go on. But at the end of the day, it isn't perfect. It doesn't earn the final step up. And that brings us really to the last one that I have on the list that we can talk about for that, and that is Jack of All Trades, Party of None. And this one honestly is still terribly generic. And I have to move it down. The reason I put it in interesting in the first place was because I actually respected the amount of effort they put into making the fight scenes appealing and fun. Outside of that, though, it has been like pretty standard for this sort of subgenre of story, for this archetype of story. It doesn't really have any substance or emotion to it. Everything feels very distant. I'm not particularly invested in the characters or anything. And I'm calling it right now that this guy, even though their excuse for kicking him out was that he couldn't do things to the like full degree. I'm fairly certain that it's going to turn into one of those things where like the hero was just jealous of this of the main character because the blue-haired chick who was their childhood friend as well was in love with him and not the hero. So he just decided, hey, this isn't a great excuse to kick this guy out of the party and finally monopolize this chick. So yeah, my big issue with this is that outside of having some decent fight animation, it still feels like just about every other version of this story that I've watched. The fact that it puts more effort into those fight scenes does distinguish it. It does make it more entertaining than those, which is why I didn't instantly drop it. And we'll see. Maybe my opinion reverses on it as time goes on, but I wasn't initially planning to watch it, and here I am now. So in and of itself, that should give it some credit. I was going to skip over this. I haven't. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it's really hard with this with these kinds of stories because they are so niche. They're so like they pen themselves in basically. By choosing this route, they have basically selected what tropes they need to do. And that's why they all feel really, really generic. Is because whereas something like isekai or romance is a very broad sandbox that doesn't really necessarily require you to use a bunch of different tropes. Um these kicked out of the heroes party or banished from my S rank party types are generally all the same sort of formula. And the only one that I've particularly enjoyed was Banished from the Heroes Party. I now live a quiet life in the countryside or whatever. The one where the dude's sister is the hero, and he's the one who is basically like the strategic mind and everything behind all that stuff. And everyone, like the sister is like a huge like bro con. She's obsessed with her older brother. They kick him out of the party, and she starts to go fucking crazy. Meanwhile, he buggers off to like a backwater country, meets like the fifth princess of a different nation that he once met, and they decide to settle down and start getting busy. Start getting busy. Yeah, pretty much. I believe their names were Rit and Red. Either way, that's one of the only ones that I really did enjoy. All the other ones have been varying degrees of incredibly similar and not as entertaining because they all sort of take the route of, oh well, this guy's actually super overpowered. No, just nobody realized it. This one ended up going the route of, I'm just going to completely live a different life because I've got nothing else to do. I don't feel like going back to the same line of work that like just totally screwed me over. So it goes in the okay category for now. There's still a chance for me to turn my opinion around on it. And now this is where we start getting to the new stuff for the season. Let's go to My Hero Academia Vigilantes. And now I've always been a pretty big fan of My Hero Academia Vigilantes, so this is obviously going to go up into must watch. Ever since season 1 showed up, I've really, really enjoyed this, and I like the debut episode for season 2 here. It's nice that they started off this new installment with Koichi basically getting some new ways to use his abilities. We have now found out that not only can he create some sort of repulsive force with his ability that allows him to slide and everything, he can also use it to stick. So one of the things that I immediately thought of was like, all right, we already know that he can use this repulsive force on the air to fly. We saw him do it in season 1, and his mother talks about how his quirk was originally that he could fly. So now that we know his ability works in two directions to where it can hold him to something as well as push something away, is he going to be able to use that like force push and force pull? Like, is he just going to be able to like launch objects with his ability? I mean, obviously, it would have to be something that is smaller than himself. But I mean, if he could use that effectively to just like deflect someone throwing something at him, or who knows? There's actually a whole lot more versatility with his power than was initially let on, and I've really liked that. The rest of the episode though is basically spent on Popstep and Koichi going to like a private idol meetup, or not a private idol, like an idol competition or something, or like I don't exactly remember what it is. Either way, a bunch of local idols were being gathered up for a show. And they went there and they ran into a returning character, Fat Gum. So that was, kind of nice to see, because I mean, Fat Gum was kind of cool in like the one part of season 4 of My Hero Academia, where like he shed all of the weight and went fucking ape shit against that guy. But he's there because he's involved in a sting operation to basically break up a drug route. And at first, I thought that the crab girl was going to be. I thought she was going to be the drug dealer herself, but it turns out that she's just one of the inside agents. Is it this series' best episode overall? No, but I thought it was a really solid start to the season. So I'm having fun with it. I liked a lot of the things that they did with Koichi. So I'm putting it up there, especially because it just has a good reputation with me. Slow episode, but it was all right. It was a solid episode. Koichi is so much more fun of an MC. I caught the last season and regret not watching with y'all during the last season. I caught up last season. Yeah. My Hero Academia Vigilantes, I do really recommend giving it a try, especially if like you're a fan of superheroes of the more or not superhero. If you're a fan of the more like crime fighter types of characters from like American comic books, the stuff like Batman, Daredevil, that kind of stuff, you'll probably really like Knuckle Duster as a character in season 1. I don't know what they're going to do from here on out, but they definitely do like have a lot of fun with just the crime fighter element that you get out of this. All right. Childhood friend rom-com. Where's that one? Here. So here we have the childhood friend rom-com. You can't be in a romantic comedy with your childhood friend. Sorry, I'm pulling something up here really quick. I have got to look at something. Because normally I label what categories I'm going to put in these when I'm making my notes. I need to double check now because reasons. Okay. I can justify putting it here. Really, the Douglas one? I love it when they don't take themselves too seriously. Okay, so the basic premise behind this anime right here, let me pull this up and read you the synopsis here. So, high schooler AU has a dilemma. His 2 childhood friends, Shio and Akari, have grown up to be almost too cute, even though they don't seem to think much of it. He can't help but see them in a different light. If they ever realized how his feelings had changed, the embarrassment would be overwhelming. However, what AU doesn't know is that Shio and Akari might have feelings of their own. So basically, everyone in this this harem is one of his childhood friends. By the way, his real name isn't AU. Manga fans know. All right. Well, that's what it said. That's what it says it is. Either way, the premise of this being that this dude is like a romantic comedy protagonist, and he doesn't realize it. He is in complete denial of it. He's out here like, yeah, that would never happen. That doesn't happen. Romantic comedies aren't real life. And meanwhile, both the childhood friends, the super tsundere red hair girl, who is best girl, I like tsunderes, okay. And the Dere childhood friend are both actively trying to seduce him. They're both actively like flirting with him as much as possible. And he is just in complete denial over the fact that They are how did I miss that? It is in my notes. Very good. Okay. They're both actively flirting with him, and he's incomplete now. Anyway, I thought that this one was pretty good. I liked both the girls. I thought they were both very endearing for their own ways, especially because I do like me some tsunderes. Okay, I like tsunderes. But I still respect, the standard dere dere kind of character, if that's what you're into. I just think tsunderes are cuter. Um, and I thought the intro for this one was kind of catchy. Like I was kind of digging it when I was listening to it. So all around, pretty solid anime. I got a couple of really good laughs out of it. I thought it was very funny. I like the characters for it. All around, I don't have any huge complaints outside of the fact that if they don't go full harem, I'm probably going to be upset that they didn't choose the tsundere because tsundere. Arceus took a W with Crimson, finally. I took your advice on putting this one on the list, and honestly, it was a good pick. It definitely better than the ones that I didn't know were boys' love that I decided that I was going to drop. Anyway. So that goes in the very good category for me. The next one on the list is Tune In to the Midnight Heart. And that is here. So, Tune In to the Midnight Heart. The premise of this one is basically that this dude who is like basically the heir to like one big company. He has like a huge how do I say this? Basically, he has an obsession with being perfect, and he calls himself 99% perfect. And he is looking for this girl that he used to listen to as she would live stream like late at night. Not because he has some crush on her or anything at first, but because he's particularly interested in making sure they don't have that audio of him confessing over the internet recorded. Basically, he doesn't want to be blackmailed with his embarrassing past. So he goes to this school that was previously all girls, but has become co-ed, and has started, going. It started like doing. I told you guys I was going to be out of it. Anyway, restarting. Okay, so, basically he finds out about a broadcast group and he's listening to all these chicks' voices and everything, and he starts noticing very similar qualities to the girl that he's looking for, who he only knows their voice, in each of these four chicks. And he can't just determine which one they are. So he basically volunteers to become a part of the broadcast club in order to, like, offering them basically like upgraded equipment and everything that he was going to pay for out of pocket and all that, and that he was going to try and make their dreams come true. Yada, yada, yada. Ultimately, it's just kind of an interesting show. There are definitely a lot of rough patches in this first episode. It's not my favorite thing, and while I do have issues, one of the things I can respect is just the main character himself isn't like a complete pushover in this setting. Like, that's one of the big things that I have had a lot of respect for a lot of anime recently, is when it comes to the romance stuff, the main character isn't a wallflower. I like that they have been transitioning more so into just not doing that trope. I like that they've been portraying characters with more confidence. But outside of that, like, I'm not particularly enamored with any of the girls. Like, I don't know much about them. The mystery element of it does have me intrigued, But so far, it really doesn't have like a ton of merits that make me really invested in this show. I find some entertainment in it, so it goes in the interesting category. Um, but this is one where I feel like it could go either way. It could be good. It could turn out to be something worthwhile, or it could go down the shitter. We will see. Um, but outside of that, since the first episode, I don't particularly have anything that I feel like I need to absolutely speak on. And that brings us to the next anime. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There was a cute girl in the hero's party, so I tried confessing. Now, this one is very interesting because it is an isekai. And the main character basically got isekai'd into this world as one of the demon lord's lieutenants. And the whole reason he didn't, he's so overpowered that he could, defeat everyone, no problem. But the whole reason he didn't is because he didn't want to become the demon king. He just thought it would be a hassle. So he basically just, bides his time acting as a lieutenant and everything. And then he runs into the hero's party, and there's this priestess that he falls in love with at first sight. And after several attempts, he decides that, hey, you guys can get past me. I will let you walk by, but you have to leave the priestess here for me. So the demon lord gets defeated, he gets to retire, and then he confesses to her and gets rejected. And that's basically the premise of this. Is this dude is a former demon lieutenant who is just tagging around with this chick, trying to get her to reciprocate his feelings. And this is definitely just an okay anime. One that I kind of like some of the things it does. Like, it's oddly satisfying at times, but overall it does really, really feel generic. Like, there's not a whole lot going for it outside of just the mom in the series. So the priestess has a mother who immediately decides to start grilling our main character Yoki. I believe that's his name. And she does it all just to, like, at the end be like, yeah, I approve of you. You can take my daughter. And yes, it does feel like it might be a limited premise. It feels like you're probably going to look more and more at like interhuman conflicts, because that's kind of what they're setting up here at the moment. But we will see where it goes. I don't particularly have any like huge things to say about it, other than like it doesn't particularly impress. It doesn't stand out outside of just the scene with the mother. That's really the only thing. And it also being an isekai, I didn't realize that this was going to be an isekai for some reason. It might have said, and I just didn't pay attention. But I didn't realize that our main character was a reincarnation. All around, it's okay. I'll keep watching it for a little while, but this might be one that I drop by episode 3. The next one on the list is The Demon Lord's Daughter is Too Kind. And this one, I'll give it credit. Demon Lord's daughter, Do, I believe her name is adorable. Like, she's very cute. I like that part of it. And just the overall endearing elements of this series are fun to watch. At the same time, it can also be really heavy and dark at times. Like, it'll deal with like people losing their families, vengeance, like just death and loss and all of that stuff overall. So honestly, there's some pretty intense moments of storytelling alongside some very, very like just relaxing, like chill, cute girl doing cute things stuff. The big issue I have with this is I still don't know who this is made for. And so it ends up kind of in the interesting category. We're going to see where this one goes. The big problem with it is at times it feels like it's made for adults with the heavier, darker storytelling with, people losing families or setting out for vengeance or having their like loved ones burned to death. But other times it's also doing like these weird like song and dance routines that feel like they're made for little kids. Like I'm watching Dora the Explorer in anime form. So I really don't know like what the age demographic for this show is supposed to be. I just know that for now, I kind of like the Demon Lord's daughter. Like she's cute, and I'm gonna give it a chance just because do, okay? Like I know you said that, but for some reason I just don't believe it. I don't believe you on that one. Like I'm very confused as to who specifically within that age range is supposed to be watching this because it feels too mature for young children, but too childish for like 12 years old. And that ultimately ends up being like just why it can only go to interesting for now. Well, I don't doubt that's what it says. It's just I don't see how it could be that age bracket. Like there are conflicting elements in it. So, the next one that we have on the list is the Holy Grail of Eris. So, the premise of this one is effectively that there is only one honest, noble family in the entire kingdom. And our main character, Constance Grail, that's her name, is the daughter of that house, and now she ends up engaged. Her family ends up in a bunch of debt. She ends up engaged to a merchant, and then a bitch basically comes in and tries to steal the man away. Tries to frame Constance for stealing a hairband that was very clearly passed along to her. And she is only saved by the vengeful spirit of an executed villainess who comes and possesses her and then basically chews out everyone who didn't have her back. All in all, I don't think it's bad. But so far, it has been a lot of bland villainous stuff. And this is another one of those tropes, or another one of those series that does rely very heavily on the mass-produced story archetype that it falls into. Like Villainess and Kicked Out of the Heroes Party, they're very similar in the kind of things, in the kind of like boundaries they draw for themselves. Like there are only very few paths that they can follow. And they've all been done before. Now, the one redeeming quality to this, and the reason why I'll put it in the interesting category and not the okay category, is that there was instant consequences in this. So the first episode, you basically get to the evil bitch dealt with right out the gate, and in a very seemingly cruel and dramatic way. Like it's not a pretty picture that they paint for that girl. And basically, this is what it's like: is it doesn't drag out the consequences. It doesn't sit there and like make multiple episodes out of this issue. It solves it right then and there, and it is satisfying. I'm not gonna lie. Watching a bitch get her comeuppance right there was nice. But again, everything else just feels very, very villainous, like standard villainess tropes. Obviously, this is going to be one of those things where Biggles fucking sits there slobbing on that thing's knob the whole time. He's not going to stop talking about how it's like peak, how it's the greatest thing ever, and I'm never going to hear the end of it. But I think it has some good qualities. It just needs to figure out a way to overcome its very standard villainous startup. All right. I can't wait to hear what Biggles thinks of this one. It's pretty serious compared to a lot of the other villainous shows. He loves it. I will say it right now. Biggles loves this show. He thinks it's fantastic. Like he was already glazing it in our private chat. Next one on the list. The Invisible Man and his soon-to-be bride. Okay, so this is probably going to be like the series where I will get the most flack because I've talked about this one a decent bit on this channel. If he thinks that it's got to be shit, haven't watched yet. Anyway, I'll take the L on this one for saying that this was going like that. I looked forward to this one or talking like positively about it. It's probably just okay. And I enjoy it because there are certain parts of it that I do find like, I guess, comfort series-ish. But there are also things that I'm not particularly enthralled by. I like the manga for this one. Like I actually read the manga for this. And I find it decently entertaining. But at the same time, I'm not like super invested in what's going on, especially not the gay guy. Like he was a little bit more annoying in this anime than he was in the manga, if you ask me. I did like I do like the girl. And Tomoe, our invisible guy. Like I like them, and they're the dynamic that I kind of stick around for. It's just those two. Those are the reasons. They're the reason that I enjoy them. Yeah, the guy in the green shirt, he's gay. Sorry for the spoilers, but he has a boyfriend. The dude who is like or the other guy in their office who is sitting around, who is just like there, like I'm tired, or yeah, he's gay. Anyway, there's another couple in this series. There's an elven couple that'll be featured in this series. Um uh that I enjoy because you have like the standard like elf and everything, the like elf woman, and then you have like the super like cleany dark elf husband. I think he'll actually likely be introduced to them in the next episode, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, I'm sticking around basically for the blind girl and the invisible guy. It's an okay show, very low key, very slow, mostly wholesome. It's just I kind of find the manga a little bit more charming than the anime. Just my personal take on that. Okay. Next on the list. Oh, it's not in here. I didn't download it. Why is it not in here? I pop in here and hear you say elf woman. What the fuck is going on? I'm talking about a romance anime, and there is a couple of elves in it, so you'll just have to deal with it. I don't know why I don't have the culling game in here, because it should be. It. Huh? Oh, I'm retarded. Never mind. It's right here. Okay. Because this is the next one I got to talk about. I won't say too many things on it. I know I'm probably one of the only people in this chat who watches Jujutsu Kaisen, but I enjoy it. I think the action's fun. The power system's cool. It goes here. What it came out this season were the first two episodes that I already saw in theaters that I've already talked about. So, Jujutsu Kaisen goes in the very good category. I really enjoy it. I don't think it's particularly amazing. We'll move on now. That's all I needed to say about Jujutsu Kaisen. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, to explain what I was talking about with the elves, Roman, it's basically a world that's kind of like a modern world with a bunch of fantasy races living in it. And you have a dude who runs a detective agency. His assistant is blind. He is invisible. And it's a romance series. So there are elves. Oh, there's also aliens. It's weird. It's very weird. Anyway, so moving on down the list, we have Fire Force Season 3 Part 2. So, I have enjoyed Fire Force in the past. I liked Season 1 and 2. Season 1 is probably my favorite part of it. Season 2 did have Shinra fighting Charon, and that was cool. But season 2 felt like they wasted a lot of characters. They wasted a lot of time. They didn't do particularly a lot of good stuff. Season 3 was a huge letdown. Season 3 was yeesh. And I'm kind of here now just to sort of like see it all the way through and have this whole thing completed. So where does season 3 part 2 rank for me? There we go. It goes in the interesting. And this is effectively why. I really liked the lore drops that we got in this episode. I thought it gave us some really cool stuff. Particularly with the sister and the doppelgangers, and all that. Shinra's doppelganger. We do find out a little bit about, the time skip and more pillars and all of that. It was so meh, honestly. It felt like it lacked any sort of intensity as compared to like the first 2 seasons. Anyway, this was a significant step up, but it's still weighed down by the first half of season 3 being an utterly miserable slog. And with people's firepower is now growing more and more intense, things are going to really get interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going because this episode did give me a lot of cool stuff that I really enjoyed, but I'm not particularly sold on this anime yet because so far wasn't a super huge fan of season 3. You're gonna have to recover from that one. All right. So we're going to start talking about some weird stuff here. So this is probably going to be a very interesting series of events, but we're moving on to Dead Account now. So with Dead Account, the premise is that you have this guy who basically rage baits on YouTube for money so that he can pay for his sick sister's surgery and medical bills and everything. So basically, he's making himself out to be the villain just so that he can cover his sister's medical expenses. I really liked that dynamic of it. Basically, like, I don't know. It was a good family thing. Ultimately, spoilers for the first episode here. He doesn't make it in time. He isn't able to save up the money to get her, to pay for the procedures that she would need to live, and she dies. And in complete denial of that, he keeps texting her old social media account over and over and over again every day, hoping to get a hold of her until one day he gets a response. And he keeps messaging that account over and over and over again, continuing to be in denial of his sister's death. And it turns out that the account has basically become haunted by his sister's ghost. And honestly, I actually thought this first episode was really good with one major caveat. Okay, we'll get into that. So just hear me out as I talk about all of this before you start judging me for this take, because I do have my concerns. So, When it comes to the series, I really liked the emotional setup for the first episode. You had a really good dynamic between this dude who was coping with the loss of his only family member, someone who he had basically put in desperate uh, effort to save, and he failed. And he's coping with that. In complete denial of it, is like completely like just he's fucked in the head. And then has that whole encounter with the ghost of his sister and everything, with like the haunted social media account and all of that. All of that was great. The big issue that I have with this was that in this episode, there was a moment that was a huge buzzkill for me. And it was when they started talking about the powers. And that's going to be a really big issue. I thought the way that they handled it was more so just like bittersweet and cathartic. The big issue I have with it is just the power system. Is they have a very cheesy power system and mid-grade animation. So I was actually really into this series. I thought it was a really good, like, gripping story for the first episode. And then the dude with the hammer started talking about like it's my ban hammer of civility. And at that point, I was just like, I was completely shocked out of whatever entrancement had me paying attention to the series. Like, it completely ripped me out of the series when I heard the fucking retarded ass name for the power. And I feel like the deeper you go into the story, a lot of the nuances for what's going to happen in this are going to drive me insane. And I have my doubts as to whether we're going to get the same kind of emotional storytelling that this first episode gave us. So I'm putting it in very good just based off the first episode. My expectations, though, are for this to slide down the hill very, very quickly. Anyway, so we'll see how this one goes. I have, like, the copium that I will inhale, that it will continue to be as good as the first episode, but logically, realistically, I already kind of have my issues with it. Like, there are certain things about it that just completely disenchant me with that series. So, the next one on the list, Trigun Stargaze. So this is the sequel to Trigun Stampede. And I don't know how to feel about this one so far. So the big thing that's happening here is that at the end of Stampede, see, the thing is, though, Nezuko wasn't dead. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I'm moving on. So basically, a fleet from Earth has received a signal from this planet because of what Vash did at the end of the episode, at the end of season of Stampede. And they are now approaching the system. A lot of people are celebrating because they feel like they're finally going to be able to get off this Forsaken Rock. Meanwhile, they are, begging the question of how everyone's going to survive in this world. You finally have Millie Thompson introduced. So Millie and Meryl are, finally their dynamic duo from the series. That's cool. And they have their run in with Zazie the Beast and have their whole talk about how, the worms, the humans, and the plants are going to survive on the planet together. And in all of this, we still find that Vash is completely fucking comatose. Because he feels guilty over the July incident. I'm not super hooked on this anime. I still think I like the original better. The issue I have going into this now is they have started swapping in and out of art styles. So, insofar as this goes, they will sometimes do 2D animations, but when it comes to major characters and scenes surrounding those characters, it's 3D animation. It's tolerable when you're all 3D, okay? I don't mind it if you're consistent with one style. But once you start switching in and out between the two, it starts to get a little obvious and annoying. That's a surface level complaint. I also didn't like that we don't get to see classic Vash the Stampede behaving like Vash the Stampede in this episode. Instead, he's sitting off in a corner, comatose, pressing the same key on a piano over and over and over again because he just feels guilty over everything that happened. I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to continue on with it. But so far, I don't think that Stampede or Stargaze are as good as what people made them out to be. I would have liked a little bit more Vash the Stampede. All right, we still got a few more, guys, so we're going to keep going on down the list. I'm going to keep on going. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, rolling. Okay, so, Misanthrope Teacher. This one can go in the okay category. I don't hate it, but so far I'm not particularly impressed with what they're doing here. Like it's mildly entertaining because like I guess you can go with the cute girl angle, but I'm not particularly impressed with the teacher angle. I'm not particularly impressed with a lot of the interactions or the humor in this. It's just kind of there for now. I don't think that this, in and of itself, is a super impressive series. I kind of hoped for a similar situation. That we would kind of get like a interviews with monster girls kind of thing. Because I really like that manga. I think it set up something very similar. But in this case, I don't know. So far there's only 4 girls in this class. Because I don't want to text the wrong person. It was okay, but this is definitely one that is like the most in danger of getting dropped based on its first episode. Because all in all, I was not super hooked on anything that it was selling. And for those of you who are unaware, the premise of this is that you have a guy who hates humanity. He had some sort of rough time at his previous job as a teacher. And his mother comes in one night when he's playing games and says, "I hope you get a job." So he goes and he starts looking for a job and he finds a listing to be a teacher. And he ends up at a school for mystical beings as a humanities teacher to try and instruct these girls on how to be human. And that's pretty much it. Where it goes from here, who knows? Um, but it honestly, I I'm I'm not a huge fan of it. So the next one on the list is Scum of the Brave, and I actually am a decent fan of this one. Um, I'm not quite sure whether I want to put it in interesting or whether I want to put it in very good right now. I think I actually do feel like putting it in very good because I have decently liked this series. I like the main character of it. I find it mildly humorous. The interactions have been fun, and come to find out that this is created by the same guy who created Sentence to Be a Hero, which explains why they're both very, very similar. Anyway, the premise for this one is that basically crime lords have been undergoing like these enhancement procedures to give themselves magic powers and all of that. Um, and they become a huge problem. So the government has started approving like these sort of like vigilante like slash bounty hunter dudes called hero. Well, technically they're called the Braves because Yusha there's two different terms for hero in Japanese. Yusha generally translates into the brave. So that's where you get the title "Scum of the Brave" from, is because only like the worst of the worst end up being heroes. Sounds very similar, guys. Sounds like we've heard this one before. Any hoozle. Our main character here ends up coming across a scene where the girl who's right behind him in the picture there. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys so that you can see. So this girl who is behind him in the picture there, she is basically having a bad run-in with the Yakuza. He saves her, kills a guy, and she's trying to recruit him into helping her fight a Yakuza boss. So we're going to see where this goes. I find it pretty entertaining so far. I like a lot of what I've seen. We're going to see whether that holds up, though, because I feel like this is one that does have the potential to go downhill fast, but it started out decent enough. I actually got a good time out of it. I like that the main character is kind of, like that standoffish hard ass type. Um, and he seems like someone who's actually going to be able to like live up to his, shit talking. He just doesn't like to because he's incredibly cautious. Who knows? That may be another L take for me in the future, but like I thought it was pretty entertaining. The last one on the list is Reborn as a Dragon Hatchling. And honestly, this one was just incredibly okay. I found the whole thing really dumb. I feel like it is a worse version of both Reincarnated as a Slime and So I'm a Spider, So What. It isn't the worst thing out there, but also not the greatest. So basically, the premise is some random dude who we don't know at all, like is reborn as a dragon egg and kind of rolls around for a while until he's able to hatch, and Remonster. And basically, from what I understand, he's a dude. He's going to basically end up as like a familiar to this chick in the background, who we've already encountered, and he's going to basically tag along with her, and it's going to be just a girl and her pet dragon on a mission to save the world. I don't know what Biggles thinks is so amazing about this show, but it's just meh. The designs for the dragons and everything, I'm not particularly impressed with the level up stuff and all that. Like, unless you have a good reason for a game world function, don't do a game world function. Like, it's just they're not worthwhile. Okay. Oh, we still have those. Okay. I don't know. It's just I have so little to say about it because, like, there's not a lot of interesting stuff that happens in this. Basically, just the main character rolls around as an egg, kills a couple of worms, levels up to the point where he can evolve into a tiny dragon or a baby dragon, and then basically gets coerced by God into becoming a baby dragon. And then they casually mention something about child of the Dragon King and all of that. And I'm just like, we're just going to gloss over that. Like, we're not going to comment on the fact that it just said child of the Dragon King. Yeah, I'm not particularly impressed with that one this season. So, moving on to some of the other ones that we have talked about. Let's talk about Kunan. It sucks. Kunan, the sorcerer can see, sucks. I'm just gonna be blunt with it. It feels incredibly generic, very fast paced, does not earn any of the payoff it attempts to gain. It's just I don't like it. It feels so fake. It's unfunny. It's not entertaining. I nothing in here was super impressive to me. If you like it, good for you. But I think that it was an astoundingly underwhelming series. And it's just another fantasy where, the dude gets all the power and everything and doesn't necessarily put in any visible work to gain that power. All right. The Darwin incident. Well, I probably I don't feel like explaining that. I don't want to talk about any Kunans anymore. I'm past it. I don't care. I genuinely don't want to watch or talk about Kunan at all. So the Darwin incident. When Brittany says peak, she generally means trash. The Darwin incident is basically just pretend deep philosophical garbage. I do not like this show. None of the music, none of the animation, none of the actual story for it is interesting. Like, you have the corniest bullying of vegans happening in the first episode, where you get this bullshit hypothetical about, like, well, if the rat has a lethal disease, what do? I shoot the rat. See, you don't care about animals. It's fucking. And then, of course, the crazy like anime, the crazy animal rights people. It's just, it was so dumb that I sat there through the whole thing just to say I watched it so I can be done with this. I'm not a fan of this dog shit, frankly. There's the surly crimson we all love. Oh, you guys like it when I'm angry? You guys like it when I'm miserable and upset? Anyway, I was not particularly looking forward to this anime, and I don't particularly look forward to watching more. Mostly because I won't be watching more. The next two, though, are shows where, like, I'm fairly happy with what I got. So when it comes to wash it all away, I don't hate it. I like a lot of things that it does. I just don't feel like it's particularly special. Um, and it goes on the binge list because it is a show where if I feel like I need to rotate something in favor, like just to like replace something like Dead Account or Scum of the Brave or any of these down here that I end up dropping over the course of the season, I'll probably end up throwing it on the list just to see what it's all about. I am not particularly hyped on that show, but I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. I think it can be kind of cute and endearing. And I like the main character. I think she's really sweet. And then we have Journal with Witch. And now this is the one I've been debating over the entire course of this anime. Best non-continuing anime for the first episode. Surprise from the Shinkai Glazer. I don't know what you're trying to suggest with that, but maybe be less drunk or less high next time. Anyway, Journal with Witch. This is one I have been debating about back and forth as to whether or not I would actually add this to my list or not. And I watched this particularly because Muffler Tape was talking about this show, and I was bored one night, so I decided to check it out. And I'm going to be entirely honest, I was pretty impressed with it. Like, I thought it was pretty good. I liked a lot of the character work. I liked a lot of just the visuals and the symbolism and stuff that was involved in it, and the story overall. It's probably not the most explosive or like I guess gripping storytelling. Not that's wrong. No, not the most exciting storytelling. It's not the most incredible, like in your face. Oh wow, that's so freaking good. It has a more subtle, like low key vibe that does something that I thought was pretty good. So I'm actually going to continue with it. It was my decision. By the end of the week, I was pretty confident that I wanted to continue on with this series, and I think it is feasible to do so. So it is one that I did not necessarily have on my list to watch, but will still be on the list nonetheless. And now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the premise of this, basically, you have a woman taking in her niece because her sister and her husband and her brother-in-law died, leaving this girl basically an orphan. And rather than have the girl get passed around between distant relatives and everything, because no one really wants to take her in, she decides that she is going to have this girl come stay with her. And honestly, I really, I don't know. It's one of those things where I enjoy the themes behind it. I like that it deals with like loss and grief and everything, and you kind of have this sort of like character driven storytelling in the background. And there's a level of polish to the way that this story is delivered that I really respect out of it. So I will give that a very good. I will put that up there. I actually genuinely enjoy that. And now there actually is one more thing I do need to talk about. because apparently everyone is watching this show and they aren't going to fucking let me do anything if I don't watch this show. So I'm going to talk about this one. Because I did, in fact, watch the first episode of Dark Moon. And here's what I have to say. It's not for me. I'm not, I don't care for this show. Like, I watched the first episode, and some of the most predictable shit happens in this episode. And here's the thing, I didn't even rank it on my anime list, because if I did, you, the fucking my anime list stalker, would have seen it. I will say it's not the worst thing out there. Yeah, because someone probably would have picked. I wasn't gonna. I was saving this one particularly to fuck with everyone. Anyway, I don't particularly hate it. I feel like with the superpower stuff, like cool, you're playing at some like supernatural thing. You have vampires in your world. Why couldn't you have other supernatural things? And I was not particularly impressed with any of the storytelling. It felt really, really reverse harem. Like all of these dudes are fawning over this one chick, and I'm just like, oh, it's a male harem. Mhm. It's a bunch of dudes fawning over one girl. It's a male harem. Okay. And they all have they all have like superpowers. And now here's the thing. Here's what I'll say. You have a school that only has classes at night in a world where vampires exist. And they claim that they have a special test that makes sure that vampires can't get into their school. But they don't show you the test. They don't tell you what it actually is. They don't tell you how it functions. Big red flag right there. Why would a private school with a special test to screen vampires have all of its classes at night? And it's basically confirmed that this is, in fact, a cover for vampires. When later in. When fucking later in the show, you have two dudes go, we're not like the others. We're vampires. Hold on, muffler. There, how about you enjoy that? uh, I mean, there are certain places that have classes at night. I took night classes in college. And I do know that there are actually places that do school at night, but they don't have. I've never heard of a high school, like a full-on high school that only does classes at night. That's not something I've heard of. Oh, I knew it was going to suck. Like, I went into it just so that I could watch this show to accurately talk about it and why I'm not going to watch any more of it. Because if I just sit here and say, no, I don't want to watch it, Muffler Tape is going to fucking ride my ass the whole time telling me, you should watch it, bro. You should watch it. You should watch it. You should watch it. Now, I have a fucking reason to say no. I'm not interested. So it's going in the not for me category, and I am going to forget it ever exists. I am perfectly glad to forget it ever exists. So, just so everyone knows, this is where we are ending the night. I have no more tricks up my sleeve. Don't bother, Brittany. You're better off not watching it. Muffler can go be gay in his little gay corner as he like sits over there slobbering over vampires and werewolves and reminiscing about all of his fan fictions he wrote for Twilight. He can have fun on his own. But I'm going to be over here watching the stuff that I want to actually watch and moving on with my fucking life. They both read the manga. Oh, okay. There's nothing interesting about this manga. Or there's nothing interesting about this series. I'm sorry, dude. Like, maybe you're just Born Blast was kind of cool, and it does it just differently enough, sort of way. Interesting. I'm not particularly interested in that one either. Anyway, this is where we are for the night. Oops. So we're gonna zoom out, take my screenshot so that I can track where I am for every week. And there we go. So, as everyone knows, we have erased after Real Girl. So we will not be doing this next week. Sorry, guys. I'm going to be putting up a lengthy announcement and probably also do a bit of a video as to what this is all about. So with that being said, we're going to sign off for tonight. I will probably be talking about some more anime here come Monday. We are going to be talking about Combatants Will Be Dispatched on Biggles channel on Monday. And I will also have a video out then. Wednesday, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do Wednesday. Probably will be CNN on Wednesday. Because I do need to, do those somewhat regularly. And then Friday, we will be talking about Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions in a video essay. And of course, you can find me here every Saturday, almost every Saturday. And we will keep that schedule. Keep doing those things. I hope you guys continue to tune in. I hope you guys continue to contribute to the stream by giving me your suggestions and just having an all-around good time. That being said, we're going to log off now. I hope y'all have a good one. And before we do, thank you, Jeremy Turner, for the $5. I appreciate it. It's a good way to as regularly as weebs and waifus. Oh, man, I do not appreciate getting called out on that. But before that, we have... You guys have a good night. Great rest of your weekend. you will see me on Monday unless we're we hang out on Discord. Then you'll probably see me shortly after the stream. You know what? Let's change the outro. Let's just do this one because I can. All right. Good night, guys.